Welcome back to the Dershow. Sorry about yesterday's cancellation. I had a family medical emergency that I had to deal with. It's been resolved. My eye is fine, as you can see. It's healing. I have lots of eye drops that I put in it, but I'm able to see much better, and I think it's on the road to getting better. A lot of news. The election seems to be getting closer. The attacks are getting more personal and more vicious on both sides. Warfare is escalating. The next 2 weeks will be interesting and difficult. We'll see. Um, as part of the upcoming election, I think the Biden administration is putting more pressure on Israel. Again, the two-state solution, the two states being Minnesota and Michigan. They're concerned about the votes there because a lot of, or at least a number of anti-Israel voters have said they won't vote for either a candidate, and Harris wants their votes. So the Biden administration is increasing the pressure on Israel, saying that unless Israel does more to resolve the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the United States will cut off aid, and also threatening to cut off aid if Israel continues to bomb in Lebanon, which it obviously ought to do. First, to the humanitarian and crisis in Lebanon. It's a fake. It just doesn't exist. Nobody is starved. Sure, there are some people that are hungry, and prices for food may have gone up. That's because Hamas is stealing the food, because Egypt is not letting food in. No country in history has provided more food, more humanitarian care, more medical care to an enemy population than Israel, more than the United States ever provided in its wars. But politics dominates in the month, in this case, in the couple of weeks before the election, and so we're seeing foreign policy determined by the need to try to seem tougher against Israel. The message to Iran is very mixed. On the one hand, the United States is sending its own troops, which Israel's never asked for, not to fight, but to operate some of these missile defense systems that are very sophisticated, intermediate missile defense systems. But it does put American soldiers possibly in harm's way. And the administration also sent a message to Iran saying, if you continue to threaten the life of Donald Trump, the former president, possibly future president of the United States, and if you hurt him, that will be an act of war. They ought to get even tougher. As Mike Pompeo said today, he's under a threat. He has a fatwa out on him by the Iranian leader, former Secretary of State of the United States. You'd think that's an act of war, and the United States should do something about that. Instead, it's still sending money. It's still enriching Iran. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I think Biden and Obama are going to be regarded as the Neville Chamberlains of the 21st century, just enabling peace in our time with Iran. It'll never happen. The only way Iran is ever deterred is by force. Okay, now to the United States. Columbia University, which has a terrible record on the issue of tolerating encampments and harassment of Jewish students and harassment of pro-Israel students, has now finally decided to ban somebody from the campus. Well, who do you think they decided to ban from the campus? A Jewish, Israeli, pro-Israel professor named Professor Davidai. It's a temporary ban, and he teaches at the business school, so he can still go to his office at the business school, but he can't go to the campus. They revoked his card. And they revoked his card because he exercised his free speech rights. Here's what the reason is. He posted the names and email addresses of a Columbia professor, perfectly appropriate to do that. I would do that. He suggested was, quote, okay with rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping. Well, if you support Hamas, you're okay with rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping. That's the truth. I would say that, and I would do the same thing. I would have somebody at Harvard Law School when I was teaching there supported Hamas, I would send out a tweet or an email saying he's okay with rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping. And I wouldn't send his home address. I wouldn't mention his children or where they go to school. None of that happened here. All they did was his email address, which is, it's the name of the guy at Columbia Law School. Everybody's mail addresses are known. And then Columbia said he falsely accused Rashid Khalidi, a respected Palestinian scholar. He is not a respected Palestinian scholar. I know him. He is a fake. He is a radical, pro-Hamas, unscholarly advocate against Israel. Falsely accused a respected Palestinian scholar at Columbia who was retiring, called him a spokesman for Hamas. He is a spokesman for Hamas. So I join him in all of those things. And so you would expect. So now you have a professor at Columbia, Jewish, Israeli, pro-Israel, a dual citizen of the United States and Israel. You would expect the ACLU to immediately jump up and down. You would expect fire. Maybe they have. I don't know. You would expect other pro-Israel and pro-First Amendment groups, civil liberties groups, to say, oh my God, look what you're doing. You're banning a professor from the campus because of his exercise of free speech. Utter silence. If a Palestinian professor or a pro-Palestinian professor were banned, you can be sure the National Lawyers Guild would be out there protesting. You can be sure there'd be demonstrations on the campus. You should be sure that the ACLU would be involved. You can be sure that fire would be involved. So let's see. Let's see who's involved. Let's see who comes and defends the rights of this pro-Israel professor to have free access to the campus. That's a free speech right. Access to the campus is a free speech right. And you can't apply free speech selectively. You can't have a different standard that applies to pro-Hamas speakers that are permitted to speak on campus. And I'm in favor of that. I'm a free speech absolutist. People want to make fools of themselves and talk about intifada, talk about jihad, let them do it. They want to burn their own Israeli flags, as long as there's a single standard, as long as the standard is identical, as long as you could have people calling for the lynching of blacks or the lynching of gays, which you never would tolerate on a college campus, then you could say it's okay to advocate the lynching of Jews. As long as you can say genocide against one group is okay, then you can say it against another group. I'm in favor of free speech for everybody, but what I'm not in favor of is free speech for me, but not for thee. But Columbia is. Columbia is very selective in how it applies its free speech principles. That's why the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, was fired, not because what she said wasn't protected free speech, but because of what she had previously said, which was that Harvard would never tolerate the exercise of free speech against black people or gay people or people who are other minorities. But it's okay to call for genocide against the Jews. It's the double standard, stupid. It's the double standard, stupid. That's what it is. And the double standard is rampant. You have to always ask yourself, does this pass the shoe on the other foot test? Always ask yourself the same question. If the same things were being said about blacks and gays and transgenders, would the university tolerate that? Or would they find some basis, some reason for saying it's against the policies of the university? You can't apply those policies selectively only to some but not others. And that's what's being done. So this guy, Professor David, I don't know him, but I will support him if he calls on me and asks me to support him and defend him. I don't know him. He's suing the university, and I support that lawsuit. We'll see if it passes muster. Columbia's a private university, so lawsuits are always a bit uphill against the private university. But nonetheless, if he can make a claim that the university is applying a double standard, and that's in violation of his contract with the university. He's not a tenured professor. I don't know. He's an assistant professor at the business school. Don't know whether he's tenured or not. He hasn't been fired. He's on leave this semester, so his classes haven't been canceled, but he's been banned from the campus. In other words, he can't get up there and make a speech. He can't do what he wants to do and accuse Professor so and so of being okay with rape, or accuse the great Palestinian scholar Rashid Khalidi, who is not great, not a scholar of any substantial nature. At least that's my opinion. Accuse him of being a spokesperson for Hamas. Those are opinions, and those are opinions that are protected by the First Amendment. It's not like what happened with me on Piers Morgan, where an anti-Israel guy called me a pervert, an old pervert. That's defamatory. That's something that's either true or false. It's false, and I'm going to be suing him for that. That's not an expression of an opinion. You can't say, in my opinion, someone is a pedophile or a pervert. It either is or isn't. And at least the message is that it's factually true, and therefore it's subject to a lawsuit. Lawsuit, of course, requires me to prove malice, but I think I can do it. The evidence is overwhelming. But let's stay away from me and get back to Columbia. Columbia is an institution of higher education that's supposed to be a place where all opinions are equal, and where the university doesn't take a position. Brown University just refused to order divestment against Israel, even though groups of students said they want to divest against companies that have a presence in Israel. And Brown said, no, we're not taking positions on global affairs. We're not taking a position on the Israel conflict. Of course, many schools took positions on apartheid in South Africa. Interestingly enough, I was opposed to that back then. I didn't think Harvard had a position to take. I had my personal views, obviously, against apartheid, but I don't think Harvard should have a view on that. And I don't think Harvard should have a view, or Columbia should have a view on who gets elected president or anything. It's a close question about whether they should express views and file amicus briefs on matters that have some indirect involvement with the university. Direct involvement sometimes, like race-based affirmative action or DEI. University of Michigan just announced that it's doubling down on DEI. It's so good, so good diversity, equity, and inclusion. Go woke, go broke. That's happening today on universities too. Universities losing students, losing endowments, losing support if they go too woke or if they go too DEI. But Michigan decided it's going DEI. Michigan, of course, is a state-sponsored school. It also gets federal funding. And so it can only go so far. It can't violate the Supreme Court decisions on race-based affirmative action. But it will do that because universities today, remember when Harvard decided when it was sued based on its race-based affirmative action program, my former colleague Larry Tribe said, well, essentially, don't worry about it. We'll figure out ways of circumventing the decision. And they have. Article in today's paper said, but the new decision of the Supreme Court has really affected diversity. No, it hasn't. It's improved diversity. It may have reduced the number of people who are Black, but that has only one element of diversity. Diversity requires diversity of opinion, diversity of ideology, diversity of religion, diverse views on the Constitution, diverse views on politics. Not only, and in fact, when you base diversity just on race, it's racist. It basically says all Black people are the same, and and they're interchangeable. If you have a certain number of Blacks, that has diversity. No, theoretically, you could have 30% Black people in the freshman class and no diversity. Maybe all of those people will have the same view. They won't, of course. We know that, just like two Jews, three opinions, two Blacks, three opinions. You don't have commonality of viewpoints based on skin color any more than you do based on parents' religion or your own religion. Notice that today in the paper, it mentioned that a lot of Christians, even fundamentalist Christians, are not voting in this election. They're staying home because ideologically they support Trump, but they can't support him, the person, because of things he's done in his personal life, which are, they believe, sins against Christianity. So even a group like evangelical Christians, it's a diverse group. You can't judge people based on their membership in a group. It's true of virtually every group. There are gays for Trump, and there are the thing that's most amazing to me is gays for Hamas, chickens for KF, whatever. See, you're gay and you're for Hamas. You're transgender and you're for Hamas. Go to Gaza and learn what Hamas is all about. You're a feminist and you're for Hamas. You're going to have to wear your face covered. You can't drive a car without your husband in it. You can't do anything without a man's permission. That's just the kind of feminism you're for, right? But if it's against Jews, hey, forget about it. Put our feminism aside. Being against Jews is even more important than being a feminist or being an advocate for gays or being an advocate for transgender. So, the world we live in is such a nutty place today, and the hard left in America is so fascist in its ideology. It's so totalitarian. They always say communist, fascists, it's all the same. The circle comes around. It's whether you're totalitarian or whether you have a view of tolerance and permissibility. I don't like the word tolerance because it sounds like one group tolerates another. George Washington, in his famous letter in 1790, said, of tolerance we will no longer speak. But you have to have understanding of other people and a willingness to accept other people, and the hard left doesn't. It's their way or the highway. It's their way or cancellation. And we're seeing more and more power given to the hard left. But universities should be neutral. Universities should be without opinions. The university should be a place where people have the right to express their opinions. So, let Rashid Khalidi debate Professor Davidi. If he says, I'm not a spokesperson for Hamas, let's have a debate about that. If another Columbia person says, I'm not okay with rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping, let's have a discussion of that. That's what the university should do. It should provide forums. But today, you don't have debates on universities. I've challenged people to debate me at universities, and no university is willing to do that. As I've said before, the Lincoln-Douglas debates could not occur today. Half the country would say we don't want to hear Lincoln's point of view. Half the country would say we don't want to hear Douglas's point of view. I own an original copy, an original book of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And I go back and I, read it from time to time. They're very technical. They're very detailed, somewhat boring sometimes. But my God, they were debating the issues of the day. They were debating slavery. They were debating the Confederacy and the right to secede. They were debating all these great issues. And we don't do that anymore. Today, it's not debate. It's banning. We do. Columbia does. We'll ban you. We don't like your views. We're going to ban you. They accuse him of harassing. I'll read something else from today's New York Times. Last week, on the one-year anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel, Professor Davidi posted videos of himself following around Cass Holloway, the university's let's see, the university's, I don't remember what he was. Oh, yeah. Following around for several minutes with a camera and peppering him with questions about why pro-Palestinian protests were allowed on campus that day on October 7th. It's a good question. I mean, I think there's a good answer. They should be allowed to make fools of themselves. They should be judged by the marketplace of ideas. But that was regarded as harassment. Taking a video of yourself asking hard questions of somebody who's an administrator in the university. No, that's freedom of speech. And that freedom of speech ought to be protected by Columbia. So, hail Columbia, hell Columbia. You're not doing your job. You're not teaching students the right values. You're not providing the right forums for debate and discussion. And so I hope that Professor Davidi wins his lawsuit. I will certainly be following it. And if he wants my support, he's got it. on free speech basis. I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, but I don't agree with my clients very often, as you know, and so I defend them on constitutional grounds. Okay. A lot of letters today. You need to file bar complaints against the 65 Project lawyers for filing frivolous bar complaints. Forcing them to defend themselves will at least slow them down. I agree with that. And I have to first win my case. I've already gotten the bar of Arizona to dismiss the complaint against me, but there's still a complaint pending in Massachusetts. They haven't proceeded on it. It's just pending. And if it prevails, then I can take whatever legal remedies are available to me. Okay, this is a question that's a little off the topic, but Professor, could birthright citizenship, that means you're a citizen automatically if you're born here, even if your parents were vacationing here and you just happen to be born here, could birthright citizenship be ended or amended by Congress, or would it require a constitutional amendment? Unfortunately, it would require a constitutional amendment. It's a stupid constitutional guarantee. Nobody should be an American citizen just because of the accident of birth. You should be an American citizen if your parents are American citizens, or if you were born here when they lived there for a particular period of time. But I know people who have come to the United States to give birth, and then they go back because they want their children to be American citizens. That does not seem to be a rational basis for citizenship, but it would require amending the Constitution, because the Constitution is fairly clear about that. You forgot to make the most important point, that these people are a direct threat to democracy, not the people they're trying to silence. I thought it was implicit, but you're absolutely right. The 65 Project is a greater threat to democracy and the rule of law than anything Donald Trump has ever said. And I think people should understand that and should hold the 65 Project accountable. Mr. Dershowitz, please continue your efforts to enforce and protect the U.S. Constitution. I have no choice but to do that. I was born to do that. Probably my last words will be about defending the Constitution. That's been my life, and that's going to continue to be my life for as long as the good Lord gives me the power to defend the Constitution. This is a guy who gets me. This man is an actual liberal, not a leftist. I hate when people attack liberals, confusing them with leftists. You know, who's a liberal ideology? No. I'm a liberal. Liberals believe in diversity of thought. They believe in, free marketplace of ideas. You can be very right-wing and be a liberal. I'm not. I'm a centrist, but I'm a liberal, not a leftist. And then the letter continues. I'm a conservative with a big libertarian leanings. I respect real liberals, even when I disagree with them, but the Democratic Party is no longer liberal. I agree with that. Certainly the Squad is no longer liberal. There's a good ad on television sponsored by Jewish Republicans showing how Harris has really been close to the Squad and their very anti-liberal policies. They are now socialists and communists and are the complete opposite of liberals. I respect Mr. Dershowitz. I think there are too many people in the Democratic Party who are, in fact, not liberals and are totalitarian in their orientation. We thought we were beyond McCarthyism, and we're not. We thought we were beyond anti-Semitism and genocide, and we're not. If anything, it's getting worse. Sad times we live in. Thank you for publicly shaming the 65 Project. You should find and release the names of all involved. Be happy to do that. I know some of the people in the project, and some of them probably don't even know what they're doing. They don't realize what they're doing is just a throwback to McCarthyism. Indeed, the very words that are used in their press release could have been used and probably were used by the right-wing McCarthyites of the 1950s. Oh, well, this is a reference to the paragraph I wrote, which is what is the subject of the bar complaint. Remember, the paragraph I wrote says not about past elections, it's about the future. It's only about if the government delegates to a private company the responsibility to count votes, then the private company has to be as transparent as the government would be. Great paragraph. It clearly expressed my own concerns about outsourcing elections to private companies. I challenge anybody to disagree with what I said in that paragraph. And yet a bar complaint has been filed against me based on that paragraph. Also, a judge sanctioned me based on that paragraph. That sanction is now being appealed to the 11th Circuit, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the hopeful result of that, because the paragraph itself is, I would do it again. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that paragraph. It's exactly what the Constitution requires. Critics have a small point against your credibility that you successfully defended OJ. No, they don't. If I had unsuccessfully defended him, would that make the critics happier? This blemish may stay with you forever. Too bad. You stand on the right side now. You do not understand me. I stand on exactly the same side. It's not that I was for OJ, and it's not that I was for Donald Trump. I don't want to make any comparison between the two, obviously. It's that in both cases, I was for the Constitution. You don't like the fact that in one case, I was for the constitutional rights of a man accused of murder who you believe did it. Under the other case, I was for the constitutional rights of a man who you've voted for and supported. But that's not what drove me. So you can't be for me when I'm for Trump and against me when I'm for O.J. Simpson's constitutional rights, unless you just don't understand who I am, and you don't understand who I am. Go back and read the previous guy who talked about me being a liberal and a supporter of the Constitution. Here's somebody who praises me. Wow, no anesthesia. Look, 86 years old. You don't have anesthesia unless you need it. I'm pretty good at tolerating pain. I've tolerated pain all my life, mostly from my critics and people who hate me. But I decided, look, if I needed the anesthesia during the procedure, they were there. They could have given it to me, but my preference was not to have anesthesia, and I think it was the right decision. I came through it fine. I believe the duty of an attorney is sacred. Constitution says everybody's entitled to justice and represented by counsel. If anybody should be disbarred, it should be the group of the so-called Project 65. I stand with you, Professor. Good. I got a number of letters like this. Elon, put up the new book, the new pamphlet that is now at the printer, being printed, should be ready end of this week, beginning of next week. We're trying to get 1 million copies of it to 1,000 institutions of learning. And if anybody thinks they can help distribute this, it's free of charge. Nobody's making any money. I'd be happy for this. So a lot of letters were, how do I get the pamphlet for distribution at Orange County Community College? And lots of other people wrote me the same thing. Once the book's out, once it's published, I will provide a mailing address where everything can be sent, and or an email or mail, whatever. And you can send us the place you want to send the books to, and the numbers, and the person to whom we should send it, and we'll take care of mailing it to them and getting it to them so they can be distributed. One guy says, I will help in University of California at Davis about 38,000 new students this year. Well, that would be nice if we could get 10,000 of them to be willing to at least take the book home and leaf through it. I would be very happy. Mr. Dershowitz, are you suing that? And then there's a bad word that I won't use. That slandered you on the Piers Morgan show. Talk about a bad faith debater. Yes, I am. Yesterday spoke to my lawyer in Great Britain, and I've spoken to my lawyer in New York, and we're going to make a decision where and when to sue, but I will sue. I think it's very important that people understand they can't. If you're having a debate about Israel, you can't just throw around false accusations like that and expect to get away with it. That's not what the First Amendment is all about. And so, today's show is really about the First Amendment and freedom of speech. Shame on Columbia for banning a professor for doing actions that are completely protected by the First Amendment. And it's not a public university. It's a private university, though it goes back before the Declaration of Independence. It was called King's College. It gets federal funding, but it's a private university. But nonetheless, they should apply a single standard. And under the single standard, people who are anti-Israel have not been banned from campus and shouldn't be banned from campus for doing the three things that this professor is alleged to have done. So let's trust the marketplace of ideas. Let's allow all points of view to be expressed on campus, and let's respond to them. I mean, the reason I wrote this pamphlet is the 10 big anti-Israel lies and how to refute them with the truth. The pamphlet is my entry into the marketplace of ideas. It's my answer to these 10 big lies. That's what the First Amendment demands. That's what the marketplace of ideas is all about. And I'm going to continue to participate in the marketplace of ideas by expressing my ideas and writing orally on this show, on other shows that I'm on, for as long as I'm able to do it. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next week.